Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Teresa. I do videos on whatever I like because I don't like putting myself in a box. And today I'm finally going to share with you guys the results of the neuropsychological testing that I had done a few weeks ago, like 2 weeks ago, I think now. Yeah, 2 weeks ago now. And I don't have the paper results yet. I'm going to get those mailed, so hopefully they get here like next week. Uh, so hopefully like Tuesday, I'm thinking. And so yeah, I thought I would share with you guys the results, and I was kind of surprised by a few things and kind of also like not surprised at the same time. So let's just get into it. So I apologize for the hair. I literally have to spray my hair down to get my curls like back and like functioning. So that's the situation. And I know I'm doing this kind of early, but it was downpouring and I was going to go grocery shopping, but I was not going to go grocery shopping when it's downpouring. So I got my laundry going, and now it looks like the sun is trying to peek out, but I can tell it's still raining outside and it's supposed to rain like all morning, all afternoon. So here we are. Okay, so getting into these results, it was kind of surprising how similar um, they were from the last time I got tested, which was my senior year of high school. And yeah, it stayed pretty consistent with that. So overall, she said that I'm like right there where I'm supposed to be to my peers. So I'm very, very close. How they categorized me in my IEP the last time that they um, tested me was borderline average intelligence. And so she didn't say this part, but basically, to help you guys understand, that's basically what I am now. And yeah, so she said that still have the learning disability, specifically with calculations. So no surprise in that. She's like, I'm sure you're really surprised to learn about that. I'm like, it's a shocker, honestly. Um, and then she said that there was a huge difference between visual stuff and auditory stuff versus verbal. She said scored really high in verbal testing stuff. I don't even know. But yeah, there was just a huge difference between verbal and just visual stuff, which totally makes sense. Uh, and a broader term that I can use is non-visual disability, which now after like looking it up, because I told my supervisor right away once I came back, um, means like a disability that's not visible to other people. So obviously we have disabilities that are visible, like somebody being in a wheelchair, um, like a short-term disability of somebody having to use crutches for a while, things of that nature. Obviously, somebody who is blind having to use, you know, maybe like a service dog to help them lead them places, or, I don't even know what the proper term is, but, um, a stick to help them be guided somewhere. That's a like visual like disability. You can see that person is disabled. Um, However, there's people like me who have a disability that you obviously cannot tell who has a disability. And I obviously do not mean to say this out of disrespect. This is just coming from facts. And I am actually a professional who works with people with disabilities. I work with adults with disabilities to live independently. So, um, and yeah, so that is a broader term I could use. I still like using dyscalculia because that is the more specific one that I am familiar with that is more specific to what I struggle with, is specifically with math. However, she did explain how when we see people with non-visual disabilities, people who tend to score higher in the verbal side of things and lower in the visual side of things, we can see how this definitely affects things like driving. So for me, like driving is a huge issue. Needing like landmarks to help with that directional challenge and some other things. And I said, oh, that makes a lot of sense because right now we have one road that's closed right now. That's a main road that I take not only to get to and from work, but also to certain clients. And it's definitely been a challenge to navigate through that. And there's also road work on another road, like over by my job, that I do take um, for a client, like getting out of town to get to them and then getting into town, getting to them. And of course, it's a main road to get like into certain businesses that I do take different clients to. So, like for me, having to like reroute the normal routes that I take, that's very challenging. And she's like, "Yep, that's definitely something that we see in people with your disability." She said that non-visual disability isn't even like an official term that we use to diagnose people with yet. Hopefully, in the next few years, we can, but not right now. So that's that. Um, she said that in the like general knowledge realm of questions that I did really like impressively well with that stuff because she said a lot of people my age like do not do well with like general knowledge stuff, and I was like, wow, okay. Um and they were kind of a bit harder of questions, I'll say. But then again, I like to do like general knowledge stuff like videos on YouTube. I love playing along with like the 1% Club on Hulu. That challenges your brain, which has nothing really to do with general knowledge, but I just like challenging my brain in that way. I love doing playing along with the quiz with balls on Hulu as well, which is more like general knowledge type of stuff. Um, so yeah, totally makes sense that I would score like really high with that kind of stuff. And if that's not the most like Ravenclaw thing I have ever said, I don't know what is. Um, but yeah, I've always loved the process of learning. And so that totally makes sense, especially like outside of the realm of like school. So that checks. Um, and let's see, she did say I do not have ADHD. Now, what's interesting is she kind of said the same thing as the person who did like my intake said, who said I have like ADHD tendencies, but I don't have ADHD. So what the person who did the testing said is I have ADHD tendencies. However, we don't have enough like evidence or whatever to prove that it's ADHD. It could just be that I've learned to like cope with it. And that's why we're not seeing it on the testing. Um, and we don't have enough like evidence like over time to really prove that I have the ADHD, I guess. So interesting, but valid. I'll take it. And then she did say I actually scored really, really high on the anxiety stuff. So there was a lot of tests that was like inventory, is what they call it, which is kind of like self assessments. And so I scored like really high on that kind of stuff. And anxiety is one of them. So I guess I have the official diagnosis of anxiety. I'll know for sure when I get the actual like paper, and that totally makes sense. given the fact that having a learning disability can amplify anxiety, like you're at greater risk for anxiety. Being adopted can definitely put you at risk for anxiety. Um, Different sexuality can definitely put you at risk for anxiety. Um, and yeah, it was kind of funny because I was talking to one of my supervisors this week, and she has been amazing at now giving me a heads up when like things are changing in my schedule. And so I told her like I greatly appreciate that because I've now like been diagnosed with anxiety. And we were both joking, and she said, if you don't have at least one mental health condition as an adult, like, you're doing it wrong. And I was like, "You're not wrong." Like, I've learned that in life. If you at least don't have, like, one mental health condition, as an adult, like, you're probably doing this wrong. So, yeah, we were kinda just, like, joking about that, but it is kind of, like, true. Um, so anyways, please do not be offended by our joke. It's just an us thing. Um, so yeah. Let's see what else came out of that. Um, I'm trying to think what else. Oh, so she wants me to possibly see if the person who did my testing, not my supervisor, but I'm sure one of them probably would support this. Probably both actually. Wants to see if um, I could do like cognitive behavioral therapy. So I'll talk it over with my therapist and see. Um, what she thinks. And so, because I do therapy, I just don't specifically do cognitive behavioral therapy, I think. Um, and we have to see if like insurance covers it. So yeah. Um, there was something else. My thoughts went somewhere else for a second. And I lost it. Oh yeah, it's to kind of like challenge those thoughts with like I think she said like driving or something like that. But overall what I've read is to challenge the negative thoughts. And so, yeah, the good thing is there would be a specific amount of like sessions, and then you'd be done because right now I don't have like a specific amount of sessions for therapy. I'm just kind of like in therapy. And so, yeah. But anywho, there was another thing I was going to say. Do. Honestly, just kind of lost it. But she kind of applauded me for having to like work harder than other people. Um, and I like thanked her for that because short story time, there was this whole thing when I graduated high school, that whole thing between like the honor kids, honor roll, was it honor kids? I don't even remember. A specific group of kids then having to like sit amongst the rest of us during graduation. And of course, the parents were ticked off because the tradition always was that they got to sit in their own like section of um, the place for graduation. And it was a huge uproar. And of course, then when the parents got pissed off, the students started getting pissed off. And so they all started going off on social media, being like, we work harder than the rest of you, and blah, 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 blah. And I was like, hold my wine. Um, and I wrote a post about how, like, there are people in special education who have to work harder than other people. I'm one of those people. We put in the same amount of work, not just in the subjects that we struggle in, but in all aspects of school. And a lot of times we have to put in more effort than the rest of you because of things that are neurologically different in us than an average person. And I didn't word it like this. I'm just wording it like this now because I am 26 years old, almost 27. Um, and so a lot of people didn't give me backlash on it. They were very supportive of it. And so I kind of got them to see, like, guys, like, chill. Just because you have this title of being, I think it was honor students or something, doesn't mean that you automatically worked harder than the rest of us. Like, there were definitely some honor students that I knew that probably did not work as hard as other people. And how do you even define how much somebody works hard at something, especially at a high school level? I don't know. So, anyways, um, let's see. So yeah, that's kind of the results in a nutshell. Let me go back on my Facebook post because I did do a Facebook post about it. And oh yeah, think I remembered now something else I was going to share with you guys, but let me go back on that Facebook post. Hopefully I remember and come back. I remember now because it had to do with memory. So there is a difference between working memory as well. And she said it's showing a strong difference in working memory with me as well. So, working memory is different than short term memory. However, it is a part of short term memory. So, short term memory, let me pull it up here. Versus working memory. So, short term memory is the temporary passive storage. Sorry, that always confuses me. I'm like, passive storage? So, like, what does that mean? Of information, like remembering a phone number just long enough to dial it, while working memory is a more active system that involves storing, manipulating, and using that information to complete a cognitive task, such as adding those numbers in your head. So that's the difference between short term and working memory. She's definitely said there is a difference um, with working memory. And that totally makes sense because with dyscalculia, against looking at that dyscalculia specifically, it does affect working memory. That's what I was going to say. So let me see what my post also added as well. And I'm going to say something to piggyback off of that in a second. Oh, yes. I take a slower time processing things. An example of this is I was at work one day. We were talking about somebody and we were talking about numbers. And my amazing supervisor asked me, like, what do I think in this situation? And all I could say was, I'm processing. And that totally explains my disability to a T. And it doesn't help that we were talking about numbers and specifically big numbers. Um, but I've realized really in my adult life how many times, like, I've been in a situation I've almost gone just like blank face. Or I've just kind of gone with the flow and I've agreed with the adults, other adults, older adults, actual adults in the situation. Because I can't really, like, I can process what they're saying, but I can't fully process what they're saying because with that situation in particular, there was so much like bouncing around that I was like, oh crap, I don't know what's going on. And this is about somebody on my caseload. Um, whoops. But yeah, so definitely slower in processing as well. So yeah, still have dyscalculia, have anxiety. There's a significant difference between visual and verbal. Verbal being stronger. Surprise, surprise. I grew up an actress. That's why I say that. Struggled with an auditory, which is really interesting because I was told when I was younger I'm very much an auditory learner, but I don't really know. Things change, I guess. I don't know. I have a non visible disability, makes sense. No ADHD, and then slower processing stuff as well. And to kind of piggyback off of what I was saying real quick about like struggling with the visual stuff, this really makes sense too because I realize now being in 2 weeks in dance class, I do struggle with like watching what my teacher is doing when she's going through combos. Especially it doesn't really help when somebody is on the opposite side of the bar as me because I can't really see, first of all. Um, However, I realize how I do pick up on it is I pick up on the language of it because I've grown up a dancer. I know the language of it very well. Um, and so I pick up on the language more than anything. And so I try my hardest not to like stare in the mirror and look at what on earth is my teacher doing, but I listen to the language and that's kind of how I learned the combination. And so, yeah, and it is really interesting because whenever we do like in front of the mirror, I'm always in the front. If we are doing in front of the mirror and in groups, I'm always in that first group as well. So there's something, I don't know, maybe like visually with that that plays into it. And I don't think it has to deal with the fact that I'm the shortest in the class. So that's really interesting. If um, we're in the corner and we're doing groups, I'm always the first in the group doing something as well. Like I kind of naturally will go first um, in a group. If we're going like single and it's a smaller group, I tend to, sorry guys, this strand of hair is really bothering me. It just needs to like blend in with everybody else. But if it's a smaller group, I tend to go near the first, I guess. Um, I'll tend to maybe like go second or third. But yeah, uh, if we have a bigger group, I tend to just go somewhere in the middle. And yeah, so it's kind of interesting how like visually, I guess, in that sense, if we're in the middle of the floor, I tend to always be in the front, which is interesting because in school, I always had to be in the front of the classroom. Um, very, 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 very rarely was I ever in the back of the classroom. I always had to be in the front of the classroom. And I'm pretty sure as like a child, like young child, my mom very much advocated for like she has to be in the front of the classroom. I don't think my mom would have ever let me be in the way back of the classroom. Literally only once in my senior year of high school was I ever in the back of the classroom. And I did just fine in the back of the classroom, by the way. But I also had my tutor in that class. Um, so yeah, but even without my tutor, I did just fine. So anyways, that's kind of all of that in a nutshell. It's kind of a lot. Once I get the paper printout, I can go over that because I am interested in reading the scores with you guys. Um, I will first like read them with my supervisor because we want to deep dive together and like what all of that means. And so once we do that, I can talk to you guys more about the scores and stuff because I'll have a better understanding of all of that. And so, yeah, I hope you guys all have a great day. Hope you guys like this video. If you guys find it useful, um, then yeah, give it a big thumbs up. Hit subscribe down below. Hit the bell for notifications. I think it's over here. I don't even know. I post every single weekend. And yeah, never be afraid, you guys, to just advocate for yourself, to ask for help or support in any way. My first step was literally talking to my doctor after I had applied for disability benefits. And they told me that they were going to do a like referral or something to get evaluated. And then that literally never happened. And I knew by talking to my doctor, she would send the referral and we would get it done. So never be afraid to advocate for yourself. That's kind of the lesson of this story. And yeah, anyways, I will see you guys all later. And I gotta go switch out the laundry because it sounds like it's done. All right, bye guys.